Greetings, opera lovers. It's Rowna, and I'm not in Pittsburgh. I'm here with my very best friend, Doris Lang Kosloff. She is my go-to person whenever I have a question about opera, and you'll find out why. When she was a little girl, starting about the age of 5, she was already concertizing as a pianist. Later, she joined her sister to become a piano duo, and I think you and your sister performed pretty much all over the United States. Is that correct?
Yep.
And then also they appeared on television in such classic shows as The Mitch Miller Hour,
Sing Along,
with Mitch, and The Lawrence Welk Show. After that, Doris and I met in school at Queens College, and she continued with her education in music. When she finished her education, she had she wore many different hats in the music field, and finally wound up being part of the opera world. I believe your first professional engagement was with the Washington National Opera.
Actually, Wolf Trap Farm Park for the Performing Arts, which is the first national park for the performing arts in Vienna, and then from there to Washington Opera.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then after that, I know you worked with Sarah Caldwell up in Boston.
Opera.
Yep. And then after that, you moved to Connecticut, where you first were let me see if I can remember this, the music director of the Connecticut Opera?
Chorus master, music director, and eventually artistic director.
Okay, there you have it. So when I want to know something, this is the person I ask. And a lot of times we argue. A lot of times I learn something. And could you just fill in what you do today? Because I'm not so sure about all your titles.
Right. Well, I have three positions. I am a professor at the Hart School, University of Hartford, where I'm also the director of the Hart Opera Theater, and I'm also the conductor for those performances. I am also the artistic director of Connecticut Concert Opera, an organization that's almost 25 years old that presents opera pretty much now in semi-stage productions, as most concert operas now do. And I am also the principal guest conductor for Miami Lyric Opera in Miami, Florida.
Thank you, Doris. So, let's see if we can get this right.
Okay.
So, opera is in the news a lot today.
Yep.
In fact, today, this morning, we were reading the New York Times, and an article was on the front page about the labor dispute at the Met. Not only is there this chapter going on, but also, even in France, as we speak, there is a technicians' strike in the festival in Aix, and one of the leading singers there, Sarah Connolly, wrote like a blog about the dispute and the disruption that's going on there, which is not a pretty thing. However, this isn't new to opera. There have been many strikes. In fact, one year I believe the Met was shut down. Was it for 4 months, do you think?
A long time, yeah.
A long time. So this isn't the first time. So Doris, my question to you is, do you think that today's challenges, because they're so severe monetarily and artistically, do you think these things are going to change how opera is going to be able to continue in the future?
Now, is your question just in the United States or global?
It's global.
Okay. I think the answers might be different in European countries and the United States. I think in the United States we've kind of had the recognition that we can't go forward as we have because, frankly, regional opera, which is the lifeblood of opera in America, is too expensive. And after the Met tour kind of ended, it was supplanted by regional opera companies springing up in places like Atlanta and Memphis and Connecticut and Orlando, all over the country. And it was a way for people to see live opera professionally, done quite well, by and large. And what happened, it was supported by generous donations, people being excited about this art form. When we had the recession that came in the 1990s, really the end of the 1980s, it started, and people all of a sudden found that discretionary income was not going to be given to the art form. And so we are in the middle of retraction in opera. Frankly, the Met HD simulcasts are a two-edged sword. Everybody knows this. They're both wonderful and terrible. People sometimes say, I'm going to the opera, and they're actually going to the movie theater, and they think it's the same. So I think all of these things play into that. I think the Met dispute has pointed out some genuine labor economic problems that are probably not recoverable by doing the same thing over and over again. So I think, yeah, there's going to be a new now in opera in the U.S. I think probably in Western Europe, the state support will keep things a little bit more stable than we don't have state support here in the U.S.
Okay. Thank you, Doris. Another question that we often discuss are the productions that I see live streamed from Europe, which contains a lot of visual imagery that can be very disturbing. First of all, they update a lot of operas to settings that sort of don't make sense to the story, or there is a great deal of nudity, and also sometimes there's just plain shock value. And this is very popular in Europe, and people are kind of used to it. We are not used to this in the United States. Do you see this coming here? Do you think it will be accepted? What are your thoughts about this?
I think probably what we sometimes refer to as Euro trash opera or reggae theater opera, the director's theater opera, started actually in Germany, but all over the place now, is not something that's probably to the American taste very much, is what my opinion is. I think shock value will get you so far. I think the bigger problems in opera here are going to trump accepting Eurotrash or reggae theater here, because I think right now opera companies are struggling to survive. If an opera company thought they could do it by successfully producing a shock value opera, they might try it. I think it's more likely that they're going to go for a repertoire change, doing things that are more musically accessible to people. I think that's going to be the American solution as opposed to going for shock.
Okay. Thank you. As you can see, Doris knows a bit. So, the last question I'd like to ask Doris, because it interests me greatly, is that, for instance, in the regional company from my city, Pittsburgh, we have, in general, over the years that I've been there, which is now almost 20 years, most of the operas we do are part of the standard repertoire. A couple of years ago, they did Dead Man Walking, which is a newer opera, and there have been others that are done. But I noticed that throughout regional companies, it's mainly the standard repertoire. So, Doris, in the last 50 years, of the operas that have been composed, which ones do you think have really entered the standard repertoire, and which ones, which have not entered that standard repertoire, do you think merit inclusion into a list such as this?
It's a complicated question. Just one thing about standard repertoire in general. Regional opera companies, yes, include standard repertoire, but it's not just all of standard repertoire. For example, we know operas that do well at the box office, and we know operas that do poorly, and we have a track record. An opera by Donizetti, Don Pasquale, is always box office death for whatever reason. People don't go to see it. However, if you had a great performance of that, and you also said that you were doing kind of a mediocre performance of La Bohème, people would buy tickets to La Bohème because of the piece. So it's not all standard repertoire that works. But I think there are a number of pieces. Every regional opera company is going to go in and out of rotation, do Rigoletto, Traviata, Bohème, Butterfly, Tosca, the ones that, and when they can afford it, Aida. So the question was about repertoire, things composed in the last 50 years. Well, I think we have a lot of operas, particularly American operas, that have become very accessible and part of our repertoire. Most especially operas by Giancarlo Menotti, who's actually an American composer, even though he was born in Italy. All of his musical idioms are American. He often wrote the words to his operas. Sometimes his partner, Samuel Barber, would write the words, and they would switch off writing music and text. But if you think of Menotti's operas, like The Old Maid and the Thief, The Medium, these operas are Amal and the Night Visitors, one of the most popular operas ever written, was written in the last 50 years. And of course, that was the first opera ever to be written, to be performed on television, as The Old Maid and the Thief was the first opera ever written to be performed on radio. So I think there's a vast array of Menotti operas. More recently, I mean, we take a look at some of the operas you mentioned, Dead Man Walking, one of Jake Hickey's pieces. I think that remains to be seen whether they're going to be incorporated as standard repertoire. I think Mark Adamo has absolutely hit the mark with Little Women, and I think that Andre Previn's Streetcar absolutely are first of all, they're doable because the production values make them doable. The production demands. It's easier to do Streetcar Named Desire than it is to do Aida. So it's the music plus the combination of production requirements that make that. On the other hand, there are a lot of operas. There's an American composer still alive, living in New York. His name is Samuel. Can't remember his name. He wrote Little Red Riding Hood. You remember who it is?
No.
We'll
look it up later on the internet.
It'll come to me in a second. And there are a lot of little operas that get a lot of play, but they're not done in the big opera companies. And Tom Pasatieri, an American composer, the first person ever to graduate from Juilliard with a DMA in music, by the way, went out to California. He wrote The Seagull in the 1980s, and it did very well. And he wrote a piece where I first encountered him called Mary Todd, the Trial of Mary Lincoln, and those were very successful for a while. But now he went to Hollywood, wrote for movies, and then he came back to the States, and he came back to the world of opera, and now he writes all of his operas for chamber orchestra, and they're coming back. I think he's about to have another big play of things being reintegrated. By the way, an opera that he wrote called Signor Deluso is the most performed opera in South Korea, an American opera.
Well, there you have it. Trivia you didn't know you didn't know. Come closer, Doris. Yeah. So we're both in it. So now you all know why Doris is my best friend, because I get to ask her all these questions and she knows the answers. Although she couldn't come up with the name of the composer. We'll look that up later. So I would like to continue doing other opera interviews. I have many friends in the world of opera. I don't have any other best friends in the world of opera, but I know a lot of people who have
Seymour Barab is the name of the composer.
There you go. Very good. So all of you, we hope you have a great day and a great summer, and I'll see you back in Pittsburgh. Bye.
Bye.